Hey Fred, today I'd like for you to talk about exercise, and I know you've been doing a new exercise called Pilates, but you've had a long history of doing many different types of exercises, from weight training, powerlifting, marathon running, and just athlete in general. So I'd like you to generally comment on the effectiveness of exercise plugged into what we call your healthy journey, a plant-based approach, as well as make a comparison to those that are in mainstream that are doing exercise. And I'd like you to really kind of specifically talk about all general sports, internal exercise, things like martial arts and yoga and Tai Chi, and external sports like basketball and baseball and other sports like soccer. And how well do you think people are utilizing their energy resources that some people call calories, from mainstream to people that might be on a plant-based approach? And could you make some comparisons between the two, please?
Well, you know, Rory, with all the confusing information that's out there, this is a really, you know, I think it's a complicated situation that requires kind of an in-depth answer now. There's all kinds of information out there now about, you know, people eating, you know, large amounts of protein to recover, and eating 6 meals a day and getting so many grams of protein per pound of body weight. And it's really an abstract science type of a thing. Years ago when I was lifting weights, and I was a over 200-pound type of guy training for Olympic lifting, of course, you know, I ate animal protein. I started that when I was a young kid, but I always ate well. I always ate what was really a plant-based diet, and I think that's one of the reasons that, you know, I feel very well today at an advanced age. And I developed a way of training for myself that was like an overload system, where I trained with extremely heavy weights and partial movements, and I really stressed my system to the maximum. Of course, I was a well-trained athlete, and I never injured myself. And when I did that, I would train extremely intensive for a couple hours. Then I would not train for 5 or 6 days again to give myself a chance to recover, because when you train that heavy, you're stressing your whole system, and you're breaking down microscopic muscle fibers, so you have to be able to fully recover before you try going into another training session. If I trained like that, you know, every other day, I would have fell into I would have got stale. You get into like an energy deficit. You'll overload your system. You're not giving your body a chance to recover. Remember, based on the intensity of your training, there has to be a relative amount of recuperation. Your recovery, your improvement takes place during your recuperation, your rest and recuperation. Of course, you got to be nourished, and that's really a big problem today in our society about, you know, where that nourishment should become. Then we also have to take into consideration where that person is as a sophisticated biological organism. If somebody's been living a terrible lifestyle and they're highly stimulated, and, you know, they're doing drugs and they're eating a tremendous amount of animal protein, at the moment they might feel strong, but they're not an efficient biological organism, and eventually they're going to break down. They're not going to have a long, you know, a career and a long life. We're going to be able to exercise to a very advanced stage. So there's a lot of people, what they do, what I see today, is they're actually burning out, because remember, exercise is a healthy form of stimulation, and what they're doing is they're stimulating themselves through exercise, but they're also stimulating themselves by excessive amounts of protein. They're using all these stimulating things. They're drinking excessive amounts of coffee, doing all these things to stimulate their adrenal production, so they have a lot of energy, they feel good, and they're able to perform fairly well initially till they crash, and they get into having injuries. And people could actually do that for a couple of years. They could, you know, but a lot of careers, athletes end up, you know, shortening their careers because they're into, you know, growth hormones and all these type of things that actually encourage their body to have injuries. A lot of people that are training with resistance training and they're using things that stimulate HDH and taking testosterone, they're definitely going to be stronger, but they're going to be more prone to injury because the muscle response is going to be so powerful, maybe the ligaments are not going to be able to handle it, and they're going to hurt themselves, and they might have joint problems.